Hey, welcome back to the First Alert Desk. I'm Maria Moreau. Today we are talking about the holidays and more particularly a new term going around. You might have seen it on social media, No Spend November. A lot of people trying to save money, put more in their wallet ahead of those holidays. Thanksgiving is just 13 days away. That's less than 2 weeks. We want to help you with some money saving tips. Now joining us today is Northwestern Mutual's financial representative, Dr. Nicole Garner Scott. Dr. Garner Scott, thank you so much for coming back here and giving us some tips about how we can save money, because I sure can use it ahead of Christmas and all of the other holidays where we're spending time with our family doing a little more gift giving than normal.
Thank you for having me on. Once again, I think this is a perfect time to assess, reset what we have going on, understand where we are financially leading into the holiday season, because it could be so emotional and emotionally driven spending around this time. I think it's really good just to bring attention to this during this time.
I couldn't agree more. Let's start from the very beginning. A lot of people might be like, what are we even talking about here? What is No Spend November?
So No Spend November is just really a movement in regards to people just being very aware and very conscious of what's going in and what's going out. Between the marketing and all the messages that are hitting us from every angle, from social media to television to radio to however you digest your information, it is time to buy, and you're getting a lot of that. And so it's just being very aware and very conscious during November to understand that you don't need to do anything unnecessary during this time. And so it's that movement that's just happening.
Now you mentioned it's a movement, and I can almost say it's also a mindset that you're shifting into prioritizing your financial well-being. And let's talk a little bit about that. How can limiting spending and looking at your finances closer help you with your long-term goals?
Well, the thing is, everything that you're doing today is what is preparing you for tomorrow. And so many times when we're in the moment, we're feeling like, okay, well, I'll just do this. I'll buy these extra few gifts. I'll put a few more dollars out there than what I anticipated. But that all starts to domino effect through the year, right? That's when you're coming out of the holiday season with credit card debt, or you've spent through some of your emergency fund or some of those other true pillars of like financial peace that you might have. So what you're doing and how you're projecting those things is very important, especially once you really start to outline what your goals are. Then it makes you more intentional with your spending. And I think what's great too during the holiday season is not just keep your goals to yourself. Talk about your goals out loud, talk about them with your family members, talk about them with your friends, with your children, whatnot, and they can buy into that goal too, so they can support you in what it is that you're doing. Because when no one understands why, they're just like, your kids are like, well, why can't I have all the gifts? Why can't I have everything? But if you have them buying into what the larger goal is, us as a family, we want to get a new house in the next 3 years, then they're able to understand, okay, let me, not be so tied into the gift, and I could be a part of the mindset shift too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important point that you touch upon, is finances and setting goals like that aren't just individual, although they often can be, but they usually involve your family and people that you are planning a future with. So let's talk a little bit about that. We're 13 days away from Thanksgiving. A lot of people are starting to save up for those holidays. How can people, couples or family members, work together through this No Spend November to meet those goals as a unit?
So I would definitely say, first and foremost, really take the time to figure out what are going to be the expenses for the holidays. The thing that I see happen quite a lot and quite frequently is, even though we know the holidays are coming every single year, it seems to be forgotten about. It's not tied into any budgets throughout the year. It's like, here comes December and all of this is out the blue. So it's really good to sit down and figure out what are going to be our travel expenses during the holidays. How can we get some tickets in advance, or how can we do group share with our family for Airbnbs or whatever that might be as a part of that. even, you have the cyber sales coming up. So you have the Black Friday, Cyber Mondays, and those different things. How can you make some of your purchases on days where everything is half? And then also too, understanding, that due to the pandemic and everything that's transpired in the past few years, a lot of retail places have a surplus of inventory. And so in December, they're going to have to move a lot of that inventory. And so with that being in place, you can really be strategic as to how you're making your purchases and not overspending during that time. So that becomes very important. And then also as well, you can really tap into your creativity. I think the beauty of what we've gone through in the last few years is, you've spent more time in the home, you spent more time around those you love, and really got to know at a deeper level what are the things that really matter. And you can take that challenge of No Spend November and really appeal to the individuals and the loved ones in your life from a creative standpoint.
Now, I've heard in the past a lot of people compare finances and saving money almost to a diet. Saying you got to give yourself that cheat day or that day to eat those more tasty but less healthy foods so that you're not in such a restrictive place that you're just constantly craving and leads to breaking your diet and your goals. Is there something to be said about that, about money? Is it better to, follow No Spend November like a textbook and not spend until you reach that holiday? Or would that lead to overspending or getting a little too eager with spending once you do reach those days that you've allowed yourself to splurge a little?
I'm a big fan of doing what works best for you. And so you really understanding your dynamic. Do you need to be in a very restrictive relationship throughout November with your finances? Is that what works for you, or does that trigger you in another way? So really sitting down and understanding how you work best and what your true relationship is with your finances. But also too, I don't want to call it a cheat day, but I want to say that we know certain things will happen. Right. There are parts of the holidays that will pull on your heartstrings, and that will transpire. So it's best to just plan for it. Right. If you know that you have your nieces and nephews coming in town, and once they get around you, you become the aunt that spends on whatever it is they want. Why not just go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to set a limit of $300 that I'm going to contribute to my nieces and nephews this year. I'm already going to have them buy into it and say, hey, nieces and nephews, your spending limit is $20 each. That could be given to you in cash. That could be whatever the gift is. But everyone is already aware of the expectations surrounding it. And then you don't make that emotionally charged over expenditure through that moment.
Very well put. I wanted to emphasize, we talk about No Spend November, and it's important to note that you can apply financial goals and save money every other month of the year as well. What are some tips for people, as they are doing more to save money? How should they use that money that they're saving? Should it sit in a savings account, or are there things they can do to really make the most of this spending period they're putting themselves in?
Yeah, definitely. So once again, laying out that foundation. So the money that you are saving, making sure you have your emergency fund in place, that you've padded your lifestyle expenses, because due to inflation, there are rising costs that many of us have not allocated into our budget just as of yet. So wanting to make sure you have that, making sure that the family is very well protected, that you're protecting your wealth, that you have your risk management in place. And if you're like, well, Nicole, what does that mean? Making sure that we have the proper insurances and the proper tools surrounding us in our financial planning, so that we're never having to go backwards with what it is that we're building. Also, too, I think it's very important just to make sure that that money that is sitting there, you start to assign a job assignment to it. Every dollar coming in should have a job assignment going back out. So what are those goals for 2023 and beyond that you need to start allocating some of those dollars towards? Because if the dollars just sit ready for any type of usage, ready for cash, it will get spent by most individuals, right? No matter how disciplined you are, if you have no end goal or end game to those dollars, they'll get overspent. But once you really sit down and start to figure out what are my short-term goals, what are my long-term goals, and how do I need to contribute to that, that makes it feasible in that way. And then I think also too, when you're wanting to come up with your strategy for how you deal with the holidays, there's so many cute ways to do that. You know, the 4 gift rule, where for those that you love, or for the younger individuals in your life, getting something they want, something they need, something to wear, and something to read. Like that becomes the 4 main categories of how you gift. So you're not buying 20 and 30 gifts that won't be there. And then even financially, right? If you're wanting to give into the future, opening a 529, a college savings entity, and having family members pour into that, where instead of them having a gift that they won't play with after a month from Christmas, you're putting money into their future. And that's just one way out of many ways, but those become ideal ways that you can start to tie your financial planning into your gifting experience.
Dr. Garner Scott, I'm always appreciative of your time and expertise. Any final words of advice, thoughts for our viewers as they're headed into this weekend, especially since payday was today for a lot of people?
Yes, I would definitely say lean into the numbers, right? There's something about really understanding what's transpiring. So either using a financial app where you're tracking everything, pulling your digital bank statements, really looking at what you spent last year and having that honest and bold conversation with yourself on what you want it to look like this year. A lot of those different things, having that in place becomes very key, because then you're operating in the holiday season from a proactive space instead of a reactive space.
Very well put. Of course, this full interview and more of Dr. Garner Scott's helpful tips are going to be on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, as well as a link to Northwestern Mutual's website where you can learn more information about ways you can really honor this no-spend November. Dr. Garner Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.